Are you a farmer or butcher ready to master direct-to-consumer marketing and meat success? Then you're in the right place. I'm Jared Hawken, the founder of ChopLocal. Each episode of this podcast features interviews with farmers and butchers who have built successful direct-to-consumer meat businesses, and they're going to share their secrets for success with you. From actionable tips to inspiring stories, this podcast has ingredients you will need to succeed in the meat business. After the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow us on social. And check out the rest of our educational resources at ChopLocalUniversity.com. Now, let's turn it over to my business partner, Katie, to get started.
Okay, welcome everyone to another episode of Meat Success, the podcast from ChopLocal University. I'm Katie Altoff, the co-founder of ChopLocal and ChopLocal University. And in our previous episodes of this podcast, I have mentioned our team member, Sydney, several times. And I've said, we really need to get Sydney on the podcast. And so, ta-da, we finally have her here to do a little interview to help you guys get to know her, what she does at ChopLocal, and kind of how she helps producers. So, Sydney, thank you for joining me this afternoon.
Yeah, of course.
All right, let's start out. I didn't tell Sydney our questions in advance, but I did kind of prep her for a little bit about what we were talking about. But let's just start out, Sydney. Tell us about your background, especially in agriculture.
Yeah, so I grew up on my family's farm that was in eastern Iowa, and primarily my family raises Angus cattle. So that kind of led into me going to college at Iowa State, where I got a degree in agricultural communications. And so it kind of felt like a natural fit to join the ChopLocal team. The direct-to-consumer meat business is just really near and dear to me, and so it's been a really good fit, and I just really enjoy working with our producers and other farmers and butcher shops across the country.
Yeah, so one of your internships that you did in college was with the Beef Council in Iowa, which is basically the beef checkoff. What things did you draw from that internship that really helped you as you came into this position? And then on the flip side, what things are really different about what we do versus the promotion that the beef checkoff does?
Well, they have a lot more regulation. That's the first thing that comes to mind. What I really enjoyed there was just the education piece and the focus on the meat in general. I think before I did that internship, I wasn't always aware of the differences between maybe the cattlemen's and then versus what the checkoff does. And so I really enjoyed the education and promotional pieces of promoting beef. And so that was really fun. Also, we kind of met each other through that experience. So small world that we kind of knew each other before this. But just leading into my current role now, I think having not that I'm an expert or anything, but having more of a knowledge of meat and cuts and nutrition and that sort of thing, I think that really helps me in my current role. And also just being able to connect with producers through that internship is another kind of tie that I now have in this role. And so that was a really good experience for me to kind of be able to bring into my role as a producer support specialist.
So then after college, before you came to ChopLocal, you were working in higher ed at Iowa State University, basically, right? Are there any kind of parallels between that and what we do with ChopLocal University, which obviously is our made-up university? It's not a land grant institution like Iowa State, but...
Yeah. So in my role at Iowa State, it was cool because I got to work in the department that I was a student in when I was in college. So that was really cool. But certainly there are a lot of similarities between my role there and what I do now. So working with students, helping guide them into what major they want to choose or maybe what classes are most beneficial, and just, in general, recruiting them to Iowa State and helping them along. And so I think that relates a lot now to my role, just with the training piece and helping people just really figure out what works best for them. And so, yeah, I definitely think there are tons of similarities between my previous role and what I do now.
Okay, so let's back up for a second and tell people more clearly because I realized we kind of skipped this. Like, let's talk about what specifically you do at ChopLocal and ChopLocal University.
Yeah, so I would say my biggest role is just being the contact for our vendors and helping support them. So our initial contact really is when they join Chop Local, and I help them through the onboarding process. So that is a lot of different things: building their store, pricing their products out, training them on the technical piece of their store, but also just in general, like marketing advice that can help them in selling their meat, providing some shipping support as well, and definitely always learning more about that alongside them. And then after the onboarding piece, I'm really just support for them as they continue to sell their meat online. And so then outside of kind of my direct support for vendors, I also work a lot on ChopLocal University. Like we mentioned, the webinars are kind of another pretty large piece of my role. And so that's been really good too. Not only does that allow me to connect with our vendors, but also tons of different farms across the country. And the other piece I really like about that is just the industry connections. It's really introduced me to so many marketers and meat experts and just all sorts of professionals kind of in our industry. And I always end those webinars feeling really excited about the value that provides our farms and butcher shops. So I enjoy that piece. I think our webinars are received really well by people, and I know that they just provide a lot of value. So I really like that piece. And then outside of that, just working on our courses and other educational resources for farms and butcher shops. So those are kind of the main things that I do.
So, for our listeners, like when we refer to vendors, those are the farmers and butcher shops who are selling on Chop Local. And a lot of times they talk to me first, and we kind of determine like whether or not they're a good fit for Chop Local, whether or not Chop Local is a good fit for their business, based on kind of their business goals, the way that they sell, what types of meat they sell, and that type of thing. Then, after we determine that like, yeah, it's a great fit and they decide that they want to join Chop Local, then that's when I usually turn them over to you. So go into a little bit more detail about like, what is that process like after they've said, yep, I want to sell my meat on Chop Local, like what happens next and how do you help them?
So there's kind of an initial email that we send to our new vendors. And so this walks them through how to get their product list to us. So generally we will give you like a list of our stock products that are commonly on Chop Local. And so
Yeah, so like a list of standard beef cuts or pork cuts that they can just kind of like, if they don't have that list already, they can work off of our list and start to develop one, right?
correct. Yep. And so with that, they can kind of develop their pricing too, which I don't want to go too far into that right now because I feel like that's something we can come back to is the pricing piece of it. And then they kind of give us other information related to their farm, pictures of their products, pictures of their farm and their family, all of kind of the essentials that we need to be able to build their store.
Okay, wait though. What if they don't have pictures of their products?
Yeah, so that's a good question. A lot of people don't. It's kind of hard to photograph meat in general. We did a webinar, it's probably been 2 years ago now, about food photography. That was really helpful, but even still, it's just kind of tricky to photograph meat. So for a lot of our vendors, and if you've ever visited our site, you'll notice this too, we use stock photos, and we really think that there's actually a lot of benefit to using stock photos. They're just generally more appetizing. And so I really recommend it to people in comparison to maybe just taking a picture of your meat. Like, especially if it's just in the packaging, it's just, again, not super appetizing to consumers. And so, yeah, we are huge fans of stock photos, and I use those often. So we tell our new vendors, don't feel like you need to get your own photos or hire a photographer. That's a great option if you have that in your marketing budget, but we can provide them if it's not something that you have.
So we work on, I'm taking credit for it, but it's you. You give them the list of standard products. They can start to fill in the spreadsheet what products they have. And especially if there's like either unique products or like different flavors, like if they have brats and they have different flavors, you have them fill in that kind of thing. You collect some photos of their farm or butcher shop that we can use on what we call their micro store. And then also use like in our social media profiles of them and things like that. And then you help find photos of products. And we should say, we try to pick photos that are really representative of the actual product itself, too, So we try to be really careful about that.
Yeah, and I'll say, we don't always get it right. And so we try to work with our vendors to get an accurate representation, but also, the more vendors we get, I feel like the more unique products we get. And so there's not always a stock photo for that. So just finding solutions to use a photo that is appetizing but also accurate. And we try to work really closely with our vendors to kind of strike a good balance between those two things.
Yeah, definitely. It's not so hard to find like a stock photo of ribeye, right? It's when we start talking about like some of the what we'd call variety meats, or we were just discussing this morning that an order came in overnight for what, 44 beef pizzles. Beef pizzle is not something that you can easily find a stock photo for. And so in some cases, we'll put like just a general farm photo for the listing of something, that's unique like that. Okay, so gather the information, get the photos, then what happens next?
So once they've given me that information and I have used it to really build their store out, and that's a service that we provide, is we build your store for you. So you don't have to feel like you're kind of just, I don't know, blindly going in and doing that sort of thing. So I will go ahead and build your store, and then we'll set up an onboarding meeting. And so this is where I will walk you through, how to operate your store, how to do inventory, how to change pricing, just tons of different things. And admittedly, like it could maybe be, it's a lot of information at first, but we really like that first onboarding meeting to show you that information so that you're aware of the features that our store has. And then from there, I'll continue to provide support. We have tons of different resources like videos and articles and just all those sorts of things that can kind of help our vendors along in the process. We work on getting them connected to things like ShipStation, just other resources that can be of help to them as they set up their online store.
What are some of the things you feel like, and this would apply to, you're working with producers specifically and butcher shops who are setting up an online store on ChopLocal. But I think that a lot of these things that they might have like questions about or hesitations about when they're setting up their online store, that might apply to producers who are setting up an online store on any platform, right? So what are some of those things that, you hear repeatedly? Like, I'm not sure how to handle this, or I'm not sure what to do about this. Like,
yeah, so I kind of said I'd come back to pricing later. And this is really wise because I would say it's the biggest like holdup for vendors when they're just getting started. And pricing is such a critical piece of selling meat, of course, but I think sometimes we get a little too nervous or a little too apprehensive and feel like maybe, that price that you would initially list something at is like you're locked into that. And that's just not the case at all. I really try to advise vendors, like, let's just accurately price something, but also know that we can change that in a month or two if you feel like that's not working for you. But kind of on the other side of that, I do like our producers to be making an informed decision when they are pricing their products. There are probably too many occasions when we just throw a price out there kind of without prior thinking about like production costs and marketing costs and all the things that go into it. And so there is a delicate balance, I guess, between accurately pricing your product for a profit, but also knowing that, that initial price you have, you're not locked into that for life. And so don't feel like it's like the end all be all when you're just getting started.
Yeah, and that's something like it's really easy to change your prices online. Like you said, you are not publishing a price list that like you have to stick to for the next any period of time, really. And for us to get the store up and running, we need to know what your products are. We need a general description of the products, which I don't remember if we mentioned this.
Yeah, we talked about how we use stock products, but we also do have a general list of stock descriptions for you as well, which I will say, that's actually a huge benefit that comes with Chop Local. I do know there are other sites that will either, you have to do it yourself or there is a charge for them writing product descriptions.
And some of them, it's a huge charge for writing product descriptions. I mean, we're talking like $50 a product to write a product description, which, okay, sorry. Anyway,
But yeah, it's a good point that we can help you too with descriptions. I know like it can be kind of tricky to do it, especially if you've never done it before. And if you're staring at a list of 50 products, you're just like,
super overwhelmed, right? Yeah.
yeah, it's a little intimidating. And so that's another thing we can help with is writing product descriptions. I will say for some of our vendors that do write their own descriptions, they tend to be really clever and good. And so if maybe that's a little overwhelming to you at first, no problem. We will just add in our stock descriptions, but that's always something that you can come back to later and kind of put like your own flair on it. I always like when our vendors say, this is Sydney's favorite cut or, their name or whatever. When they add in just those personal touches, I think it makes the descriptions, it just really takes them up a notch. And so again, it's kind of like the pricing thing, you can go back and change those things at any time and it's pretty easy to do so.
And on pricing in particular, like we were saying, we need that list of your products and that basic information so that we can get it uploaded into the store. And there's some things behind the scenes that go on that you do for SEO purposes that, again, like it's something that most farmers and butcher shops like probably have no clue what to do with those fields for their products, but we've got it built in. We've got it part of our system. We can replicate it, we can replicate that system or that process over and over and get your store set up properly that way too.
I guess the other thing I was going to say too that maybe makes people a little apprehensive at first is we sell by weight ranges. And I'm sure this has been mentioned, in the podcast in the past, or if you've listened to any of our webinars or just anything we do, we sell by weight ranges and not by exact weight pricing. That's another thing that can sometimes trip people up a little bit if it's not something they've done before. And so that's another thing I try to walk people through. We love weight ranges, but also I want to make sure you're setting it up to not make life so hard. And so just doing general weight ranges, not like super specific, super small ranges that are going to be really hard to match. Like the next time you take an animal to the locker and it's a completely different animal, like you just don't want to have to fight really random weight ranges. So I try to provide some guidance there and like, let's make this more generalized to make life easier on you in the future.
Yeah. Again, a delicate balance. And like, because you've seen literally dozens of these, you've been through this dozens of times now, you can give that really good advice. We looked yesterday at another farm's website. It was not a Chop Local one, but they had their filet. They had 1 ounce weight increments, like from a 1 ounce filet, which we were talking about, like 3 ounces of beef is the size of a deck of cards. So 1 ounce filet is, that's like 2 bites, basically. Right? Okay, so you could buy anywhere from a 1 ounce filet up to like a 33 ounce filet, which a 33 ounce filet, like I don't even know what that's a tenderloin, but
First of all, that's just really hard for you to continue to manage the inventory on. And also, when you think about like just information overload for the customer, like how do they know what to decide at that point? That's just too much. And so
that 3 ounce deck of cards thing, that's knowledge that you and I learned from the beef checkoff, right?
yes, it is.
The average customer is probably like, I have no idea what a 1 ounce filet looks like. They don't know, So yeah.
Yeah, no, we just, after doing this for a few years, I just feel like there are those helpful things that we can try to give guidance on. But like you said, it's like a delicate balance. I want to give guidance, but I also want you to have the freedom to do, what works for your business at the same time.
What do you see like commonalities between some of our most successful vendors?
So this is kind of a tough one, but the first thing I would say, this is hard to measure, but just a willingness to learn and a willingness to make changes when they are necessary. That's not a meat business specific thing, but just I think any successful business, like you're willing to shift and make changes. So that's the first thing. And so when I see that our vendors are taking our courses, they're on our webinars, they're going the extra mile to learn new things, that typically tells me that it's a good indicator of success, I guess I should say. The other things would be, a variety of products always do pretty well. I feel like we talk about this a lot, but beef is by far, the most popular. When you pair beef with a couple other things too, that really leads to success. So having a couple different product offerings is really helpful. Consistently do marketing efforts. That's a sign of success too, whether you want that to be on social media or whether you want that to be, email marketing. Just being consistent about it is really key in seeing success. And I feel like everybody says that, but it truly is like just the truth. So those are kind of a few things.
On the email marketing topic, so one thing we didn't talk about is that in the past year or so, you've started doing some email marketing on behalf of a couple of our vendors. Basically, they pay us an additional monthly fee and we do their email marketing for them. When you first started that, like, what kind of results did you expect and has it aligned with what has actually happened?
Yeah, so I feel like I've always kind of heard that email marketing is a pretty successful marketing channel, certainly more so than Facebook or Instagram or any type of social media. And so I find myself feeling a little more motivated to do email marketing because it just works. It really does.
Yeah, and there's like that immediate gratification, right? Like it's not like social where you post and you post and you post and it feels like you're running on a hamster wheel. Like
So I think Teresa at West 40 would probably be okay with me sharing this example, but we were doing like a lot of emails around the holidays for her, specifically around Thanksgiving, I remember. And there was a morning that I sent an email just about some Thanksgiving offerings. And I think within like 2 hours, she had 10 or 15 orders, and she had made pretty much an identical social media post to what I had sent out via email at the same time. Or no, maybe it was like the day prior.
it was like the day prior because I remember we were comparing like and more than one. She'd posted about it on social at least a couple of times. Crickets. And then you sent out the email and boom.
Within hours, like she had tons of orders. And so I like that example because it's really easy to see. It's like kind of the instant gratification thing. The orders just they come in a lot faster, and email subscribers are just definitely more likely to purchase. They're more of a warm lead than people that follow you on social media. So I really like the email marketing piece. I definitely see it as a huge benefit for the vendors that use it. And again, especially for the ones that consistently do it. I was just saying to you yesterday, one of our vendors in Virginia, like she sends a weekly email out or more. And just immediately after we get those emails,
She's got new orders coming in. Yeah. It doesn't like we were talking about that vendor in particular, her emails aren't, it's not like she spent a ton of time in Canva before to do that, like they're very simple.
just a simple reminder is really all people need. And so it doesn't have to feel as intimidating as I think some people are afraid that it's going to be. You don't have to be a graphic designer. You don't have to be a writer, anything like that. Just that touch point with your customers via email is so valuable.
I remember telling one farmer that, like, what you just posted on Facebook, you can just put that same thing in an email. And he's like, really? I thought an email had to be like, several paragraphs, like a blog post or a diary entry, and I'm like, no, just it's another way to keep in touch.
Yeah, in fact, I'd recommend the opposite.
Exactly. We want it to be shorter, right? I was just looking up some stats this week too. It said that if you offer an email sign up at checkout, like a checkbox where people can say, yes, I want to sign up for your emails, 60 to 70% of people who purchase from you will sign up for your emails. So that's part of going back to what you said about email being more of a warm lead. Like, people don't give out their emails willy-nilly, and we talk a lot. We've got an email marketing webinar that people can refer to about this too. But so if they are giving you their email, that means that they are like, it's like they're ready to go on a first date with you, right? Like, maybe they're not ready to like marry you yet, but they're ready to go on a first date at least. And then if they do purchase from you, like, then this is the best way to keep in contact with them, to get them to purchase again. Like, I feel like I can't repeat that enough. And we even saw this recently with one of our other vendors that you do email marketing for. Like, you sent out an email about, was it bulk purchases or a bundle box that they had?
Yeah, well, it was about bundles because she obviously has bulk, but she has some like boxes as well. And yeah, that one was really successful as well.
Again, within a couple hours, we had multiple orders for hundreds of dollars that came in for these large bundle boxes. And it was just so cool to sit and watch. Like, you send the email and then the results come in.
I'm a huge fan of email marketing, especially in comparison to social media. I just really enjoy it. And I really encourage our vendors to use that as a channel for marketing.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Thank goodness for you and I that we now have Sierra, which we'll get Sierra on the podcast again. But Sierra is our social media guru, because obviously Sydney and I don't love it.
It's a necessary evil, but I understand when our vendors don't want to do it. I'm like, I get it, because I don't want to either.
And some people are really, really good at it and have a lot of success with it. And we've interviewed a couple of those people already for the podcast. But yeah, it can be a struggle. So every spring and fall, we host a webinar series, free educational events for farmers and butcher shops that are selling direct to consumer. Sydney, tell us a little bit about our spring 2025 webinar series that we have planned.
Yeah, so first of all, we are going to start with Stephen Ussery of Stewards Unlimited. He talks about the USDA Business Builder grants. And before I go any further, I guess I should say you can always find these recordings on our YouTube. And by the time this is published, a few of our 2025 webinars may have already been uploaded there. But then after Stephen's webinar in February, we will be talking about how to get people to buy from your online store. I feel like that's a huge conversation we have with our farms, but also tons of just, farms and butcher shops we talk to across the country. Like, I have this online store, but everybody just keeps texting me or saying they want to meet in person or whatever it is. And so we're going to talk about lots of different strategies to get people to actually use your online store so that you're not having to field all those calls and messages and Facebook comments or whatever it may be. And then in March, we are actually going to be having Sierra, our marketing specialist. I feel like we've mentioned her. Sierra will be talking about social media strategies. And so I know we've kind of talked about social media in the past on webinars, but she's going to take a little bit different of an approach. She's really good at Reels, so I know we're going to have her talk about that, but just some other strategies that she sees success with. So I know that one will definitely be popular. And then our last webinar of the season will be about how to turn your farmers market customers into year-round customers. We feel like that's a good timing. I know a lot of our vendors are starting to think about farmers market season in that April timeframe. And so we're going to walk through some methods to kind of convert those customers into purchasing from you year round. So we're really excited about this lineup of webinars. We definitely think they're going to provide a lot of value. And we're just really excited to be able to connect with those farms and butcher shops through this series. So like I said earlier, you can always find our recordings on our YouTube channel, and you can get registered as well at ChopLocalUniversity.com.
But speaking of social media, switching gears here a little bit. With Sierra now here to edit some of our videos, I say we, but like I don't cook often enough to do very many videos, but you've done a couple cooking videos now that she has used on social media, right? So tell us a little bit about your cooking habits. Like, what do you like to cook? How do you like to cook? Tell us all about your baking too, because that's the best part, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I love to cook. Well, Katie and Sierra have told me one of these times I need to like put my face or my voice on it, but you'll notice that mine are more just the hand videos. So I guess they're warming me up to doing scarier things.
Yeah, we'll keep working up to it. Eventually you'll be Julia Childs behind your island, doing a whole video, but we'll start with just the food, right?
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure what my habits are. I don't know. I call myself very Midwest.
Do you cook 7 nights a week?
7 seems like a stretch, but definitely 5 or 6 for sure.
And it's just you and your husband. So,
Yeah, so it's just my husband and I, and so we live like pretty far from any sort of grocery store. And so I would say, pretty consistent about meal planning and grocery shopping just because it's a total pain for me to run to a grocery store.
especially since you work from home too. It's not like the grocery store. That's one of my things since joining Chop Local and I work from home too. It's like when I worked in town, I could run over my lunch break or stop somewhere on my way home. And now it's like you have to take a trip to town to get groceries.
Exactly. I completely agree. So I am really good about meal planning. Every week I do try to get like several types of meat into our meal plan. We eat a lot of beef, especially ground beef. I feel like just everybody does probably. And we also eat a ton of pork here. I feel like I say this to you all the time, but we eat so much ground pork. We're huge fans of that. And so I don't know what exactly like my cooking type is. I was kind of saying I'm very like Midwestern cook. Like pretty simple.
Yeah, but the recipe that you did recently was like a beef stir fry with like Asian sauces.
Okay, well, it was just teriyaki, so not like that fancy, but
And yum yum sauce. You made homemade yum yum sauce. I saw the recipe and I was like, there's no way I'm making this sauce. That's way too many ingredients for me. I'm going to buy a bottle of yum yum sauce and make this recipe instead.
okay, I did do that. But
Do you follow recipes to a T? Like, do you go on Pinterest and find a recipe and follow it? Or do you have recipe books that you look through? Or like,
so generally, the first time I make a recipe, I'll try to follow it pretty closely. And then after that, I probably won't, but I'm pretty type A. I'm sure you would say that about me. And so, yes, at first, I do feel like I follow the recipe, but then I feel more comfortable changing things up.
and then of course you have your sourdough and baking adventures, which I keep recruiting Sydney every time that the school has a fundraiser and they have like we've had a dessert auction for the music boosters the last couple of years. I'm like, Sydney, please, I need a dessert. And she comes through for me.
Yes. Yeah, I do really enjoy baking. That's kind of always been one of my favorite things. So I guess that doesn't really relate to me, but I do really enjoy being in the kitchen and cooking.
Yeah, you know your way around the kitchen. Other things that Sydney enjoys. Okay, Iowa State basketball, right?
Yep, huge fan.
The Office, she can tell you about probably almost every single episode.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many times I've watched it through, but it's a lot.
A lot. What else? I'm trying to think. Those are the two off the top of my head is like when Bailey's in the field, her husband works for Iowa State, but he'll be in the field during planting and harvest and he travels a little bit too. Like that's what she's doing is watching basketball, gymnastics. Oh, I forgot about that. Sydney and I were traveling last year during the Olympics, and we watched gymnastics like the whole time that we were on. We went to the North Carolina Meat Summit.
I feel like everybody does that though. Like you just have to watch gymnastics during the Olympics, but
I don't think everybody gets quite as into it as you do, but that's all right.
I think it's one of like the most popular Olympic sports though. But yes, we did have it on the phone a lot. Katie and I do have a lot of fun traveling stories together, so
And it's been awesome this last year, especially like to get out and meet producers. Like on Candace's episode, she talks about how she got to meet you. And then, like you said, we've gotten to meet some really cool, other people working in local foods or in meat marketing or that type of thing in the past few months. And that's been awesome too.
yeah, I will like I do really enjoy working from home, but it is fun like just getting to actually meet our vendors or meet, Matt LaRue or Steven from Stewards Unlimited. It's just really fun to get to meet people in person as well. I feel like that's one of the most like fulfilling things for us.
And it's so like we don't have an event, so it's not like I'm trying to plug our own events, but I feel like going to these events is always so inspiring. Like I come home and I'm so excited, and even if social media feels like a drag all the time, then like I come home and I'm like, no, no, I'm ready to give it a try again because I saw somebody's cool ideas at the conference, right?
Yeah, no, I know that they do cost money, but I really think it's just so important for really anybody, farmer, butcher shop, industry professional, to go to those types of events just to, I don't know, meet other people like you and get that sort of inspiration and get out of your bubble for a little bit.
Yeah. That's one of the things that Jared and I talked about too is like meeting the other people like you, having that network of people who like understand the same problems that you're going through and can give you ideas about how they handle them. Like that's such a valuable thing. And that's one of the things that I feel like I'm really proud of what we built with Chop Local and Chop Local University. And like, if a producer comes to you with a question and they're like, hey, how do I handle inventory management for this? Like, you've again talked to dozens of other producers. And if you don't have an answer based on that, you probably can go, oh, so and so has a similar situation. Let me go ask them what they do normally and pass that along. So,
Yeah, I feel like I do that. And also, this is kind of related, I swear, but just getting to see our vendors connect with each other, oh, I just love it. It makes me so happy, like when our vendors become besties and are commenting on each other's social media. I love that aspect of the marketplace. I know some people see it as like competition, and of course, like they're not. Yeah, I mean, I get that, but also like there's so many benefits to it as well. And I know there are so many of our vendors that just contact each other to look for advice. And so I love that about Chop Local, that our vendors have each other to, bounce ideas off of and exchange resources and that sort of thing.
yeah, definitely. And like I always remind people, like whether you sell your meat on Chop Local or not, you're still in competition with the Chop Local vendors. Like,
Yeah.
and they have a team backing them up and the promotions that we do and that type of thing to help them out. And if you think you are better off doing it by yourself and being the lone wolf, more power to you. Like, if that's your personality and that's what works for you, go for it. But you're in competition with us no matter what. So,
Yeah. No, I do understand when people say that, but I think the benefits just far outweigh any sort of competition. There's just, yeah, so much value to be gained by working with other vendors, and I love to see that.
yeah, totally agree. And the fact that like Chop Local vendors, if people haven't looked at the site before, so each Chop Local vendor has their own micro store and they can send their customers directly to their micro store. The way we talk about it is it's like your farmer's market booth. There might be more than one vendor at the farmer's market that like, especially produce vendors that, but if somebody's developed a relationship with you, they'll come back to your booth time after time over and over again. And that's the same thing that happens with our Chop Local vendors. They can send their customers directly to their micro store. And when we dive into Google Analytics and look, if a customer comes directly to a micro store, they usually stay there. They purchased from that person. Now, then we've got other customers, like I don't want to give away too many names, but we've got Elijah, we've got Sean. There's a few of them that like it's like their hobby to try out different Chop Local vendors. So they came to choplocal.com, they're looking for a specific product, and they will test out different vendors. And sometimes they will find one that they will stick with for a while, and sometimes they'll just continue. It's like it's fun for them to just try everybody's meat. So
Yeah, it's so exciting to see that when we have like just kind of random, that's what like our whole goal is, right? Is to give people a place to find meat that is a good choice for them and their families. But when they just keep coming back and ordering from different farms, it's so inspiring and we just love to see it.
yeah, we start to see those same names come through orders all the time. And like some of them really are tied specifically to a vendor, and maybe they have a subscription for ground beef or eggs or something like that. And then some of them are more kind of just shopping all over the place. One thing we didn't mention about successful vendors, but this goes along with this. I feel like sometimes those customers that aren't tied really tightly to a vendor will switch vendors depending on inventory. So we've got one I'm thinking of that Chess always buys oxtail when it's in stock, like a lot of it. And she will switch from, I think it's a she will switch from vendor to vendor based on who's got enough oxtail in stock for her to get a free shipping order. And that's kind of an unusual cut. She obviously really likes it for some reason, or can't get it locally, or something like that. But talk a little bit about inventory management and kind of how you see that affecting, the success of a vendor.
Yeah, this is kind of a conversation we were just having the other day. And it again, I feel like I keep saying this about certain topics, but like it's a delicate balance, right? I think from a customer's perspective, it can be frustrating to go to an online store and like 75% of their products are out of stock. Don't do that.
That's happened to me where like I wanted to try one of our vendors' new products, or try a special product like a flavored brat or something like that. But most of like a lot of their other cuts were out of stock, and I'm just like everybody else. I want to get free shipping, right? And so I'm like, well, I don't need 12 packages of brats to get, or 10 packages of brats to get up to the free shipping threshold. I want to try one package of brats, but they're out of stock of hamburger or pork chops or whatever it is that I would add to my normal order to get to that threshold. And so I just don't order then because of that.
So what we're trying to say is if you have a ton of products that are out of stock, this is if you have a Chop Local store or not, if you're just on a different website, like go ahead and disable those products. Save the customer some effort. Stop making them click around to see what's available. But I would also say, if you think you're going to get something back in stock soon, it's also valuable to have those things up so that people know, like, okay, hey, they do have this sometimes. And with our website, you can, sign up for notifications when that is back in stock. So I already said this, but yeah, it's kind of trying to find like the right balance between not having your store be hard to navigate because of inventory issues, but also making people aware of what you do carry. I would say some things that are additionally very frustrating to customers is when they do order and then it's not in stock, which I know like nobody's perfect and it's kind of hard to manage those things, but I encourage our vendors as much as possible to have an updated inventory list, especially for those first time purchasers to buy something and then be told it's out of stock, it just leaves a little bit of a bad taste in their mouth. And so, yeah, trying to avoid that as much as possible.
Another strategy, like on our stores, and I know some other platforms don't allow this, but we can rearrange products, or our vendors can rearrange products too. And so if they have something that's out of stock, but like they want to let people know that they offer it generally, like maybe it's Italian sausage, they can move that towards the bottom of their store. So like you said, it's not like customers don't have to sort through all the out of stock options to get to the other stuff. The other thing that we just implemented is out of stock products. The photos all turn grayscale, black and white, which that's going to make it really easy for people to see if something's out of stock. And I'm excited for that. So
Yeah, no, I think the rearranging products point, that's a really good point. Maybe move it to the bottom so they don't have to sort through all of that.
yeah. And then if they do sign up, like you said, if they sign up for notifications, then as soon as you update inventory, they're going to get an automatic email that says inventory's been updated for this product. And we see some people that have customers sign up for that. And like, especially like filet seems to be one that people sell out of, like as soon as that filet is back in stock, the orders come in immediately because people see those emails. So
Yeah, inventory is a tricky thing, and I feel like we're always kind of trying to find a better way to do things. We were also saying, when we were having this conversation the other day, though, like it can be a benefit and you can use it in your marketing, like kind of that fear of missing out concept. Like, hey, this usually sells out really fast. We're going to update our inventory, make sure you get yours, and then give them a direct link to go purchase it on your store. Like, what a great way to make people want to purchase.
absolutely. Yeah. The other thing, have we ever had anybody that's like, let's say they sell beef and pork, but they only take hogs in a couple times a year, and so they might be sold out for a while. Have we ever had anybody update their product descriptions and say like next pork is, you know, in March or something like that?
Yeah, we do. And especially like so many of our vendors do that for their quarters, halves, wholes, that sort of thing. And I love when they do that because not everybody understands that you can't just get a quarter, half, or whole immediately. It's not an instant purchase. And so putting that sort of information in your description and making sure it's updated, I think is such a benefit to the customers. But yeah, staying on top of it is key though, because there have been times where I click in and they're like, oh, the next butcher date is such and such, and that's a date that is passed long ago.
Like 6 months ago? Right. Yeah. They never updated it.
Yeah, but in general, like I really enjoy when people do that. It's very helpful to the customers, and it's also helpful to our team because we do from time to time have customers call in and ask us those things. And so when we're able to find that information on a vendor's site, it saves us some time from having to, go through those communications.
Right. Do the whole back and forth messaging, emailing, calling, whatever. Yeah. Okay. This has been a great conversation. I hope people got to know you and your love of baking and, Iowa State Cyclone basketball. I almost said football, but you're not as big of a football fan. It's more basketball, isn't it?
Yeah, but just generally a big Cyclone fan.
So, biggest words of advice for people like considering selling online? I know that's a big, broad, question.
I kind of already said this, but just being willing to learn and try new things and test out different methods, like that is just the biggest thing I can recommend. Like, don't be stuck in what you've always done. So, a willingness to learn, and also just kind of a willingness to take risks too, not being too apprehensive about any one little thing, whether it's shipping or pricing or how you're going to list certain things. Just kind of going for it and seeing what works. I feel like there's so much benefit to just getting started and then changing things from there. You don't have to have it all right when you first get started, and really just jump into things.
Yeah. Just take that risk, get going, and then based on what we've learned over time or based on what you, the vendor, the farmer, butcher shop learns as they go, you can always adjust it, right? So, yeah. Yeah, that's good advice. I like that. All right. Thanks for joining us, Sydney. If anybody wants to get in contact with Sydney, it's really easy. You can contact us through ChopLocal University. If you hit the contact button at ChopLocalUniversity.com, Sydney's the one that's going to reply. Okay?
Thanks so much for tuning in to Meat Success. We hope this episode gave you fresh insights and inspiration to beef up your meat marketing. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, follow us on social, and share with your fellow farmers and butchers. Have questions or ideas for future podcasts? Reach out to ChopLocalUniversity.com. Until next time, remember, there's more than one recipe for meat success.